Well, tonight I'd like to make a comparison between a man walking the Christian life and plowing with a yoke of oxen. Now, I know all of y'all thinking, what does he know about plowing with a yoke of oxen? Well, I'm glad you thought that, because I'm going to tell you. About 2 years ago, Patty, her sister, and brother-in-law and I took a vacation up into the Northeast states. And as we was coming back from Maine, coming back down through the state of Massachusetts out toward the west, we've been driving all day, we called ahead to see about getting a couple of rooms. And when we got them, we went on down to that town, and it was a small town, but they were just so happened to be having a Frontier Day celebration. And boy, they had the flags out and the advertisement out and the banners out, and boy, it was going to be a real big deal. And I said, well, we need to go to that. And no, we're tired from all the riding we've done, and it's about 3:30 in the afternoon. And I said, well, yeah, but I want to go see this. Well, finally, they said, okay, we were going to go to the hotel and take a nap, but we'll pick you up, we'll drop you off at the parking lot and pick you up about 5 or a little after. Okay. So they took me down there and they dropped me off. And as I said, they said they'd be back by 5 o'clock or a little after. And when I got there, it was really a big deal. It was really neat. They had brought in old schoolhouses from way back early 1800s and late 1700s. And church buildings, and it is everything, blacksmith shop, and they even had 2 water mills. One of them cut lumber, the other one a ground grain. And boy, I was really having a good time. And then on the outskirts of that little village, they had set up a farm. And so I went to that, but as I was coming out of the barn, I happened to look down, and there was a little field down there, a little pasture. And they were demonstrating with a yoke of oxen, and they were plowing in that field. Whoa, I need to get down there and see about that. So I started down there. Well, it was about an eighth of a mile down there. Well, by the time I got down there, they had quit plowing with them. And so I just walked up to the fence and was looking at the yoke of oxen and wishing that they would plow again so I could see it. And as I was standing there looking, a young lady came out from behind one of those teams of oxen, and she walked right over to me. Wasn't very many people there. I was only about 4 or 5 people there besides myself. And she walked right over to me and she said, would you like to plow with the oxen? I said, yeah, I'd like to plow with them oxen. And she said, well, go down there to that gate and come through and come back up. See me and I'll get you started. So I did. I went down there and went through the gate, came back up to see her, and she said, well, which team do you want to plow with? And I had noticed when I was standing at that fence that there was 2 teams of oxen there, but one was a littler team. It was only about the size of, well, what our bulls would look like, stock bulls around here. But the other one was huge. It was at least 12 to 14 inches taller in the back than the other little one. And I don't know what made me say it, or what even came over me. But all of a sudden I said, well, I want to plow with the big ones because I want to do some big work. Okay. So, okay, we'll get started. Well, so she showed me what to do. Number one, the handles are not to lean on. Number two, you must lift up the plow to start so that the point will go into the ground. Number three, you must hold the handles up to keep the plow in the ground. And number four, you need to hold the plows level, the plow handle. Well, that sounds pretty easy to me. Okay. So, here I am, standing back here behind the plow, holding on to the two handles, and she goes up by the yoke, by the oxen, and she says, "Are you ready?" I said, "I'm ready." So she took her little stick, swatted that one oxen on the rear, and that oxen leaped out forward like a cannonball out of a cannon. And the plow point sunk into the ground, and we were off for about 3 feet. All of a sudden, that plow point comes shooting up out of the ground like a submarine coming out of the ocean on a resurfacing drive. And it ran, the plow then kind of ran along on the ground through the grass like a snake. Well, what happened was them oxen took off so fast that I wasn't holding the plow up anymore. I was just hanging on. And when I did that, that pushed the handles down and the plow shot out of the ground. Well, as I stood there, I kind of thought about it a little bit. And I thought, wow, them oxen are fast. I thought oxen were slow and lazy, but not them. In fact, they don't even belong down here. They ought to be down at the Kentucky Derby. I think they could outrun half of the horses down there. Well, we got ourselves together again. And I got ready again, and she went back up by the oxen. After she got it all stopped and we got ready, and she said, "Are you ready?" I said, "Yeah." So I lifted back up on that plow, and she smacked those oxen, and they took off again. But this time, I was ready for him. And we got that plow on the ground, and boy, we went tearing down through there. But I realized there's another problem we were having. The furrow was about 8 to 6 inches deep and narrow. And I'm trying to run in it. And it's so narrow that I just had to try to put each foot in front of the other one. And I was having a terrible time. And then I thought, well, I'll just run with my right foot in the furrow and my left foot on the ground. And so when I did that, I was hopping along there, and then I put too much weight on the right handle, and whoop, plow comes shooting out of the ground, run along on the grass like a snake. Well, I'm sure by this time that girl was thinking, this old man's going to learn a lesson today he'll never forget. And I haven't. But she got the oxen stopped. we got ready again. And I got ready this time. Things went a little bit better. We got the plow back in the ground. We were plowing along. But then I could see that, boy, you got to really watch what you're doing. You got to keep your eye on the plow. You can't be looking around. There's no time to look back. Because if you push down on it too hard, it'll come up. If you pick up on it too hard, it'll go down. And it just is up and down, and it looks like you're plowing a little mounds. So we worked at that. We finally got to the other end of the pasture. We got over there. We pushed the plow around to get started on going back where they had plowed. She got them all lined up, and we got ready to go. And for the first time, I was able to look back, and what I seen wasn't very good. It was pretty bad. But I still had a chance to do better on this return trip. And things did go a lot better on the return trip. And I got my reward. I got all the way back without giving up and keeping the plow on the ground. I also got to plow with a team of oxen. And when I looked back at my furrow that I had plowed, it looked pretty good. Well, with what time we have left, I would like to make a comparison of 7 things that went on in my experience there. The 7 things of plowing with a yoke of oxen and living the life of a Christian. Number 1. My experience started when the young lady came over to me and asked me, would I like to plow with that team of oxen? And as a Christian, we all have a starting point. Yours may be the time that you listened to a preacher and he was preaching the gospel, and you decided, I want to start the Christian life. Or it may have been when you were with a one-on-one study, kind of like Philip and the eunuch, and you decide that you want to start the Christian life. Or it just could be that you've seen a friend, a relative, living the Christian life, and you said, that's for me. I better do that. So we all start like that. Number 2, in my little story, I had the choice of plowing with those team of oxen when she came over and asked me if I wanted to plow, or if I didn't. And just as in the Christian life, we all have the same choice. We have a choice to do it or not to do it. And we all must make a choice. We must make the choice of whether I'm going to try to live that Christian life or I'm not going to. Number 3, we must all start the same way. We must start by being baptized into the Lord, and He will add us into the church. We're not born into the church. We're not sprinkled as infants into the church. In fact, I read my Bible, it says we must hear, believe, repent, confess that Christ is the Son of the living God. And I don't know if any infant can do that. So, also, in my experience, it started when I took hold of the handle of that plow. Christ said, no man having put his hand to the plow and looking back, is fit for the kingdom of heaven. And what Christ was saying was, no man that starts the Christian life and then looks back should look back. In my experience, there might be another thing on that, because when you're trying to plow and you look back, you're not going to make much of a furrow. It's going to go back and forth and up and down and all around. You don't have time to do that. Number 4, when we judge how good a plowman is, we look at how straight and how deep his furrow is. When we judge a man how his Christian life is, we usually judge how straight and narrow he walks. We might say, that man walks the straight and narrow. Well, in Matthew 7:14, Christ had something to say about that. 7:14, he says, because straight is the gate, and narrow is the way which leadeth to life, and few there be that find it. Also, unfortunately, people will judge us on how we live our Christian life. But let's remember, there is only one judgment that really counts, and that's God's. And we see in Peter, 1 Peter 1:17, God said he will judge according to every man's work. In Romans 14:10, it says, we shall all stand before the judgment of Christ. And if we look in Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, (5 and 10), for we must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ, that every one may receive the things done in his body according to that which he hath done, whether it be good or bad. So we'll all be judged. That is part of our Christian living. Number 5, when I put my hand to the plow and said, I'm going to plow, that's an action word. It means that there's going to be some work done. The same thing with the Christian. When he puts his hand to the plow, when he says he wants to live the Christian life, that's an action word. That means we'll be doing some work. In Mark 6:15, Christ said, go ye into all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. And in James, I'm sorry, in James 1:26 or 27, it says, to be a Christian is to visit the fatherless and the widows. And this visiting we're talking about ain't just going by and saying, hey, how you doing, and talk about the weather a little bit. When they talked about visiting, they were talking about going out and seeing what they could do for that person to help them. And so that's what we need to do as Christians. And in Galatians 6:10, it says, and as we have therefore opportunity, let us do good to all men, especially to them who are of the household of the faith. And I heard a preacher one time say ability plus opportunity equals responsibility. And that's true. If we have the ability to do it and we have the opportunity, we have the responsibility to help people when they're in need. Number 6, in my experience, the plow came out of the ground a few times, and when that happened, I wasn't plowing anymore. As Christians, sometimes our plow comes out of the ground, and we're not living the Christian life anymore. We need to do something about that. Also in 7, the 7th one, we'll have to hurry here. When we stopped, but when she stopped to help and let me get the plow straight, get started again, it was the same as a Christian can do the same when his plow comes out of the ground by going to God and asking for forgiveness and going back and living that Christian life again. But the 7th one is my reward. But the reward that I got was the satisfaction that I've got to plow with a yoke of oxen. But the Christian's reward in life, the world, it is much greater. It's a home with God the Father and Christ the Son. In Revelations it says, be thou faithful to the death, and you will win or gain a crown of life. So tonight, if you haven't started your Christian walk of life, you can do that tonight. Or if your plow has came out of the ground, you can take care of that tonight. Or if you need the prayers of the church, you might come forward as we stand and sing.